I'm kind of in an interesting position here, but I would suggest to Mr. Cerna that I don't disagree. I'm not a medical expert by any means, so I can't speak to the positive medical benefits at all. But as you know, this is strictly a presentation on the totality of what we see locally, regionally, and on a national level. But to be clear, I'm representing the Sheriff's Department here, and I'm also the Bureau Commander for a HIDA program, which is the high intensity drug trafficking area. We focus primarily on, the bigger drugs, methamphetamine, cocaine, heroin, opioids, and fentanyl. Marijuana is really not something that is on our radar screen, but I will do my best today to talk about some of the issues. And to be clear, we're pretty neutral on this stance. The slides, I guess I'm in control. Is this the, okay, sorry. There we go. So this is data from Sacramento County Health and Human Services Division. I learned about this data actually in Fresno. I was in Fresno a few weeks ago talking about opioid response and enforcement and prevention. And down in Fresno, they advised me they had these studies that were kind of looking at community perceptions of narcotics and alcohol and some other harmful substances. What I found interesting down there was that for youth under the age of 18, marijuana was their number one concern. It's the same concern up here, alcohol being number two, just slightly lower. And then as you get older in life, it tends to dissipate. So we found that interesting, but it does show that we have at least a perspective from the younger generation that marijuana is one of their number one concerns.
But it doesn't dissipate, it looks like, at all for alcohol.
Right. You can see some trends. For me, I would see that the methamphetamine when you're 19 and 26, that's my world. That's the issue I have concern about.
Right.
So those are the things that we focus on. Slide here. This is from the International Academy of Science and Impact of Cannabis. They are an organization of doctors who work with our federal partners and provide various data about marijuana. They keep a medical library of peer-reviewed medical literature about cannabis that is available to the general public, so it's a great resource. The library contains about 35 plus categories of marijuana and cannabis: violence, suicide, PTSD, pediatric exposure, motor vehicle accidents, depression, autism, emergency visits. There's just a lot of data there to kind of go look at and collect. But this screenshot in particular is a peer-reviewed literature discussing some data points related to dispensaries, minors, and young adults. Here, both studies from 2017 and 19 suggest there's a higher propensity for young adults and minors where access to dispensaries is readily available. They tend to use it a little bit more. I'm not sure if that's shocking to anybody, but again, it's peer-reviewed. I thought it should be relevant to our conversation today. Again, continue on with what I'm referring to as Isaac, just as short. I know it's not the proper enunciation there, but that's what I'm going with. You have three screenshots of different studies. The top one, this slide represents different peer-reviewed studies. Between 2019 to June 2019, September of 2019, 700 medical dispensaries were studied. Just under 68% of those dispensaries failed to comply with laws regarding age limit signage, which is a concern. And about 35.3% of those broke the law by marking items that appealed to children in their businesses. The second study is from 2012, which is a study of about a little over 9,400 people between the ages of 15 and 26, essentially suggesting that consistent marijuana use during that time frame of your life leads to increased intimate partner violence. And that's something that obviously catches our attention on the law enforcement side. There are many other studies that also kind of go down this path. I realize this study is dated from 2012. It's 10-year-old data at this point. But if you start looking and going down that rabbit hole, you'll see other studies that are similar. The third study from 2013, again, another dated study, is suggesting that marijuana and vehicle accidents have a correlation. And this also is continued on through other studies. There's a recent one in June of 2021 that says very similar things. So those are things that obviously catch our attention.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
If I could ask a question. If you could, thank you. So I guess under the second golden bar, the bar there, it says consistent marijuana use was related to an increased risk of intimate partner violence.
Right.
Related. So statistically, do you know if that means there was a direct causal relationship, or is it the fact that there are other factors that aren't mentioned here that could have been much more influencing on the connection, the relatedness between intimate partner violence, and it just so happens the marijuana use was kind of thrown in with the other influencers.
I see your point, and to your point, I think that's without having this entire document in front of me, I would suggest to you there probably are other factors that are correlated with almost any study.
Yeah.
And I'm sure this study would say something very similar.
Great. Thank you for that.
This other slide here, this next slide, one I also found interesting, done here locally in the county of Sacramento by the Sacramento County Department of Health and Human Services. They surveyed about 11,000 clients in a program, and within that group that they surveyed, those under the age of 17, 86% of them reported marijuana as their primary substance abuse issue. To me, again, I did not know this. I found that very shocking. With an increase in crimes within the immediate area, specifically property crimes, violent crimes, and robbery. This same study goes on to articulate that robberies may be a part because marijuana is a cash-based business. And obviously, if you have cash and lots of cash, you're kind of a target for robbery to an extent. This is from the Journal of Criminal Justice. Using UCR data, again, this is going to be out of Oregon, but just for context here. Essentially, they're suggesting that legalization in Oregon led to an increase in most crime, violent and property crimes, and that this study noted that legalization of retail sales resulted in increased property crime. They go on further in the study to suggest that the legalization of marijuana has not had a crime-reducing effect, like they kind of had theorized or has long been believed. Again, just another sample, a recent sample, and I promise this is the last study I'll talk about. You're probably tired of me talking about studies, but they're important. I found this one to be oddly interesting. In 2019, this study saw a reduction in violent crime within a half a mile of a dispensary, but only in the above median income neighborhoods. So that was interesting. I had never heard of that. I thought that was very intriguing. They also observed 13% fewer hard drug and alcohol-related crimes per month, but they did see an increase by 15% of vehicle burglaries within a half-mile radius of that same location. So conflicting data, but one I thought was interesting.
Mr. Chair. Thank you. And I wanted to chime in now because you prefaced it with this is your last mention of
Yes,
academic studies and journals and whatnot. But would you and I say this not to challenge you at all, but would you agree that I can probably go to Cal State Sacramento this afternoon, go to the library, go to used to be with the third floor when I was there, the journal stacks, and find an equal number of journal studies that go the other way?
To your point, sir, I would hope you would do that online, but yes, and this is the challenge that I was faced with, frankly. There are, and I've said this before, there are countless studies that are going back and forth, and I will conclude this by telling you just that more study is needed, and that we have competing interests here. Yeah. And ultimately, it's a tough position for me to tell you crime is going to go up or going to go down.
Right. Now, and I appreciate your candor. I just feel it needs to be said because, again, for the public's benefit, who may be watching the presentation, they may be left with, well, it's the undisputed truth or facts or foregone conclusion that the highlighted sections of these various periodicals or journals that you cite is the unchallenged truth. So,
and I will do my best to refute what I've just told you here in a minute. So bear with me. So our next slide, these are recent headlines. Again, I thought they were pertinent because this is what I see at my level. This is the top article here from 2021, suggesting that the cannabis illegal market is about $8 billion a year annually in the state of California. And then the article from May of 2022 talking about the complexities of the taxation laws, and they are incredibly complex. Just reading the article was enough to basically a spreadsheet and kind of have to figure this out. But these are the challenges that we face in this state, and this is the side of the illicit market why it's so successful here, because it's taxed at a different rate. This was a national headline article from June 3rd talking about the similar issues, if you will, about the marijuana being currently a cash-only business because they can't make federal deposits, and the challenges that comes up with. And then in Washington State, again, they're having some violent crimes, robberies, and homicides as a result of that. Again, I'm only putting this out there as just data from a national level to consider. It's not a local issue, because here is the flip side. This is recently done in March of 2022. The Sacramento County Cannabis Study, Comprehensive Cannabis Study, was published by the city of Sacramento. It's a 200-page plus report. There's a lot of data to intake within this report. I'm highlighting over the items that I thought were of interest to the board at the moment. The study noted that the cannabis industry has not had a negative effect on home prices, nor has crime increased near dispensaries. This is locally within our own region, a study done by the city of Sacramento. However, and again, I'm going back to this little bit of a theme here, when addressing underage youth concerns around dispensaries, the report states the balance of consumer demand, including among youth, continues to be met through illicit supply based on price and availability. We're talking about, again, that illegal illicit market that is very robust in the state. Later in the report, they indicated an increase in crime has not occurred, but that cannabis businesses remain an attractive target for thieves. Again, they're relating this around cash. In June 6th of 2022, the Sacramento Bee went over the same study. Similar results. The only thing that the Bee mentioned that I did not mention, and I mention it here, is that in 2021, the study observed that property values decreased by about $13 a square foot. They are also calling for more data, more studies, more information, but whether that's an anomaly or something related is unknown. And I was just made aware yesterday, and I've only read it briefly, the city of Santa Ana has done also a similar study to the one that Sacramento did. The data is very similar. Like, crime did not go up, and things seem to be normal. Violation for driving under the influence of strictly cannabis. So I can't provide you data or numbers that say cannabis industry will create more DUI. I can't give that to you. I've talked to CHP about it. We can't do that. And then Sacramento County does have some pretty vast natural wildlife resources that are under threat because of legal grows and their correlation. So with that.
Great, thank you, Lieutenant. We have some questions. I know that we'll get to the gentleman on the phone in a moment. So Supervisor Frost and Supervisor Desmond.
It's my understanding that trained individuals can detect if someone's under the influence, driving under the influence. And so that's something that you could do if we did legalize, or, or is that something you're doing now? Or
You can certainly detect if somebody's under the influence of marijuana, but there is no specific penal code that says you were driving down the highway or freeway, and as a result of your actions, you were stopped and ultimately maybe arrested because you were driving specifically under the influence of marijuana. That's tracked under a different category, so it's very difficult for anybody to pull the actual strictly cannabis-related data as opposed to alcohol.
Or a threshold, right?
Or a threshold.
so there's no way to enforce driving under the influence.
Of strictly marijuana. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
You can certainly detect whether you're under the influence.
Well, that's a problem. That seems like a little bit of a problem, doesn't it?
I think I was talking with CHP this week. They tend to view that as a problem.
Thank you.
Good segue to